What if the most damaging thing you do to your body isn't late night eating, junk food, or even poor sleep, but something you do within the first 30 minutes of waking up? It's not the obvious villains, not sugar-loaded desserts or greasy fast food. It's something far quieter, something most people consider completely normal, sometimes even healthy. Inside your body, you have an elite repair system, stem cells. Think of them as your personal maintenance crew. Tiny, powerful workers constantly rebuilding tissues, slowing aging, and keeping you resilient. Every day, they scan for damage, repair what's broken, and help your body stay young at a cellular level. But this one simple morning habit acts like microscopic sandpaper. No pain, no warning, no immediate symptoms, just a slow, invisible grind that wears down your body's ability to repair itself. Imagine starting your car every morning by slamming the accelerator while the engine is still cold. It might feel fine in the moment, but over time, the internal damage builds, not from one action, but from repetition. That's exactly what's happening inside your body. And here's the unsettling part. This process doesn't take years to begin. It can start shifting your cellular environment in just days. So what is this habit? And why does it silently interfere with your body's most powerful repair system before your day even begins? Picture this for a moment. A single high-sugar breakfast, something as common as sweet tea, white bread, or cereal, can push your blood glucose into a spike so sharp that it triggers a burst of oxidative stress, almost like internal rust forming in real time. Inside your body, millions of cells are suddenly exposed to a wave of reactive molecules. It's like sparks flying through delicate machinery, tiny structures being hit over and over again, faster than they can fully recover. Within just 60 to 90 minutes of that typical sugary morning meal, your system can temporarily shift. Inflammation markers rise, cellular balance gets disrupted, and your internal environment becomes slightly more hostile to repair and regeneration. The unsettling part, you won't feel any of it. No pain, no signal, no warning. This could already be happening inside your body, this very morning. Even if everything feels completely normal on the surface, just quiet, gradual wear happening beneath your awareness. Here's what no one is telling you. Hi, I am Dr. Christal Sohl. I often explain this in a very grounded way, not like a distant academic, but like a clinician who has spent years sitting across from real people dealing with real fatigue, real weight gain, and real confusion about why their bodies seem to be slowing down. Over the years, working closely with adults in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, she began noticing a pattern that didn't match what most people assumed about healthy aging. These were individuals who were genuinely trying. They were walking regularly, cutting back on food, avoiding obvious junk meals, and in many cases following guidelines that should have supported better health. And yet, something wasn't adding up. Many still describe the same experience. Waking up tired, feeling inflamed, struggling with stubborn weight, and noticing early signs of metabolic slowdown that seemed disproportionate to their lifestyle efforts. At first, it looked random. Genetics here, stress there, sleep issues somewhere else. But over time, a quiet pattern began to emerge. It wasn't dinner, it wasn't late night snacking, it wasn't even lack of exercise, it was their mornings. Dr. Sohl observed that a large number of these patients consistently started their day with foods they genuinely believed were harmless or even beneficial. Bowls of cereal marketed as heart-healthy, toast with jam, sweetened coffee drinks, flavored yogurt, or so-called clean granola that still carried a heavy sugar load. On paper, nothing seemed extreme, but biologically, these choices were sending a very specific signal to the body first thing in the morning, one that shaped everything that followed. And then something interesting happened. When a subset of these patients began making even small adjustments to their morning routine, without changing their entire diet, many started reporting noticeable shifts, more stable energy throughout the day, fewer crashes, better metabolic consistency. A sense that their bodies were responding more predictably again. Not overnight miracles, not extreme transformations, but steady, observable improvements that stood out compared to everything else they had tried. That's when the real realization set in. This wasn't about restriction or fear-based dieting. It was about timing, biological signaling, and how the body interprets the very first inputs of the day at a cellular level. And once you understand that mechanism, the solution becomes far simpler and far more powerful than most people ever expect. But to really understand why this happens, we need to look at what's going on beneath the surface, at the level of your cells. In this video, you're going to get a complete breakdown of what's actually happening inside your body when you start your morning the way most people do, without even realizing the biological consequences. First, you'll uncover the hidden mechanism behind it all. We'll look at what really happens in the body after a typical high sugar or unbalanced morning meal, and why the first input of your day has such a powerful influence on everything that follows. Then we'll break down the chain reaction in simple visual terms. You'll see how glucose spikes and insulin surges don't just affect energy levels, they actually reshape the internal environment where stem cells operate. The same system responsible for repair, regeneration, and resilience becomes subtly disrupted. We'll also explore what's happening at a deeper level: oxidative stress, inflammation, mitochondrial strain, and cellular signaling disruptions. But instead of overwhelming science, you'll understand it through clear, everyday analogies that make it easy to visualize what your body is going through in real time. After that, we'll shift from problem to solution. You'll be guided through a practical, step-by-step morning protocol designed to support metabolic balance and create a healthier cellular environment from the moment you wake up. No extreme diets, no complicated tracking systems, just simple, realistic adjustments that fit into a normal lifestyle. We'll also expose some of the most common healthy morning habits that may actually be working against you. Many of these are widely recommended, which is exactly why they're so often misunderstood. And finally, you'll learn a simple daily system you can start immediately, something that doesn't require perfection, just consistency and awareness. By the end, you won't just understand your morning routine differently, you'll understand your body differently. And that shift alone can change how you approach your health long term. But first, let's simplify what's actually happening inside your body. Because once you see it, you won't look at your morning the same way again. Think of your body as a vast living city, always active, always rebuilding. In this city, stem cells are the elite repair crews. They are responsible for fixing damaged roads, restoring broken buildings, replacing worn-out infrastructure, and keeping everything running smoothly behind the scenes. Most of the time, you don't notice them because they work quietly and efficiently in the background. Under normal conditions, everything flows in balance. Traffic moves steadily. Resources are delivered where they're needed. Repair crews respond quickly to small issues, patching up damage, maintaining order, and ensuring the city stays resilient and functional. But now imagine what happens when the system is suddenly overwhelmed. A high sugar or unbalanced breakfast is like flooding this city with chaotic traffic all at once. Streets become congested, signals get disrupted, movement becomes erratic and unpredictable. At the same time, pollution levels spike. This is oxidative stress, like thick exhaust fumes filling the air, making it harder for repair crews to see clearly, move efficiently, or do their job properly. The environment itself becomes more hostile to maintenance and recovery. Then comes another layer of disruption: insulin surges. These act like emergency command signals that force the city to shift priorities. Instead of focusing on long-term repair and infrastructure maintenance, resources are suddenly redirected toward immediate damage control. The system goes into urgent response mode, leaving less capacity for regeneration and deep cellular repair. Now the chain reaction becomes clear. An unbalanced breakfast triggers a glucose spike, which increases oxidative stress, which fuels inflammation, which disrupts the internal cellular environment, which ultimately interferes with stem cell function and repair efficiency. Meanwhile, the mitochondria, the power plants of each cell, begin to struggle under pressure. Overloaded and constantly reacting to unstable inputs, they produce energy less efficiently and generate more waste in the process. It's like power stations working overtime, but delivering weaker, less stable output across the entire city. And the most important part is this: none of this comes from a single moment. It's not one breakfast, one spike, or one stressful morning. It's the repeated daily pattern that slowly rewires how the entire system operates, shifting it from a balanced, self-repairing city into one constantly reacting to disruption, instead of rebuilding itself efficiently. When we zoom in on what's actually happening inside the body, this effect isn't caused by one single process. It's the combination of several biological mechanisms working together under stress. The first mechanism is glucose spikes and oxidative stress. When you consume a high sugar or rapidly absorbed carbohydrate meal in the morning, blood sugar rises quickly. In response, the body increases metabolic activity to process it, and this leads to the overproduction of reactive oxygen species, or AROS. These molecules are highly unstable. Imagine sparks flying inside a complex machine, small, fast, and capable of hitting delicate components. In small amounts, ROS are normal, but when they surge repeatedly, they begin to damage cellular structures like membranes, proteins, and even DNA. This creates a harsh internal environment where stem cells struggle to operate at their full regenerative capacity. The second mechanism is inflammation and signaling disruption. When glucose spikes and oxidative stress happen frequently, the body begins to interpret it as a form of internal stress. This activates low-grade chronic inflammation. It's not the kind you feel immediately. It's subtle and persistent. Stem cells depend on extremely precise biochemical signals to know when to activate, when to repair tissue, and when to differentiate into specialized cells. But inflammation disrupts this communication system. It's like a city where workers are receiving unclear, overlapping instructions. Repair the road, no wait, rebuild the structure, no actually pause everything. The result is inefficiency, delays, and poorly timed repair activity. The third mechanism is mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria are the energy generators of your cells, the power plants that keep everything running. Under healthy conditions, they produce stable, efficient energy that supports regeneration and repair. But repeated glucose spikes and metabolic stress force mitochondria to work harder and less efficiently. Over time, it's like a battery that no longer holds a full charge. It drains faster, recharges poorly, and delivers inconsistent output. For stem cells, this is critical. They require stable, efficient energy to divide, repair, and maintain tissue health. When mitochondrial function is compromised, their ability to perform these tasks declines. Individually, each of these mechanisms creates stress, but together they form a feedback loop that intensifies over time. And because this is tied to a daily morning habit, the effect isn't isolated, it compounds. Day after day, the same early glucose and metabolic signals subtly shape how the body repairs itself, gradually shifting the balance away from regeneration and toward dysfunction. Across decades of metabolic and cellular research, major institutions like Harvard, Stanford, and the Mayo Clinic have consistently pointed toward the same underlying pattern. The body's response to food, especially in the first hours of the day, has a measurable impact on oxidative stress, inflammation, and long-term metabolic function. Multiple studies on high glycemic meals show that rapidly absorbed carbohydrates can cause a sharp rise in blood glucose, followed by a corresponding increase in oxidative stress markers shortly after consumption. In simple terms, when blood sugar rises too quickly, the body produces more reactive molecules that temporarily increase internal cellular stress. This is not a rare or extreme condition. It is a predictable physiological response observed in controlled environments. Other research focusing on glucose variability, the repeated spikes and crashes in blood sugar throughout the day, has linked this pattern to increased inflammatory activity. Chronic low-grade inflammation is now widely recognized as one of the key factors influencing metabolic dysfunction over time. It doesn't create immediate symptoms, but it gradually alters how efficiently cells communicate, repair, and maintain balance. When we zoom further in, mitochondrial research adds another important layer. Mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside every cell, are highly sensitive to metabolic stress. Studies show that frequent glucose fluctuations can reduce mitochondrial efficiency, leading to less stable energy output and increased cellular waste production. In practical terms, this means the body's energy systems become less reliable under repeated stress conditions. What makes all of this important is not just the data itself, but what it represents in everyday life. These are not distant laboratory observations disconnected from reality. They are direct reflections of what happens inside the body after common meals, especially those high in refined sugars or rapidly absorbed carbohydrates. When you translate the science into plain meaning, a clear picture emerges. The body performs best in stable conditions. When blood sugar remains balanced, oxidative stress is lower, inflammatory signaling is reduced, and mitochondrial function operates more efficiently. Stem cells, which rely on this internal stability, are better able to carry out their repair and regeneration roles. Across different fields of research, the conclusion keeps pointing in the same direction. Metabolic stability supports healthier cellular environments. And even small daily choices, especially repeated morning habits, can influence how consistently that stability is maintained over time. Start with hydration before anything else enters your system. A simple glass of water first thing in the morning helps rehydrate the body after hours of sleep and gently signals the shift from a resting state to an active metabolic state. If needed, adding a small pinch of minerals or electrolytes can further support this transition by restoring basic fluid balance and improving cellular readiness for energy processing. This step is simple, but it sets the foundation for everything that follows. Next comes the structure of your breakfast, and this is where most of the biological difference is made. Instead of starting with fast-digesting carbohydrates alone, the goal is to build a balanced plate that slows absorption and stabilizes blood sugar. Protein is the first key component. Foods like eggs, yogurt, or legumes help moderate glucose response by slowing digestion and supporting satiety signals. Protein also provides amino acids that support tissue repair and cellular function throughout the day. Fiber is the second layer. Vegetables, seeds like chia or flax, or even whole fruits in moderation, create physical bulk in the digestive system. This slows down how quickly glucose enters the bloodstream, preventing sudden spikes that can trigger oxidative stress. Fiber also supports gut health, which is closely tied to metabolic stability. Healthy fats are the third component. Nuts, seeds, olive oil, or avocado help further slow digestion and create a more gradual release of energy. They act like a buffering system, preventing rapid fluctuations in blood sugar while also supporting hormone balance. Together, these three components create a stabilizing effect that keeps energy steady and reduces internal metabolic stress. Now contrast this with isolated sugar intake. A cup of coffee with sugar alone, pastries by themselves, or refined cereals without protein or fat create a very different response. These combinations digest rapidly, causing sharp glucose spikes followed by quick crashes. This roller coaster effect increases oxidative stress and places unnecessary pressure on the body's regulatory systems right at the start of the day. Timing also plays an important role. Long periods of fasting followed by a sudden high-sugar meal can intensify the glucose response even further. For this audience, the goal is not extreme fasting patterns, but rather consistency, bringing the body into a stable rhythm where morning intake does not shock the system. A simple example of a balanced breakfast could be eggs with sautéed vegetables and a handful of nuts, or Greek yogurt with chia seeds, berries, and a small amount of nut butter. Another option might include whole grain toast paired with avocado and protein on the side, rather than toast alone with jam. Even small combinations matter. Carbohydrates on their own behave very differently than carbohydrates paired with protein, fat, and fiber. The wrong combinations increase volatility in blood sugar, while the right combinations smooth it out. A small but powerful addition to this routine is light movement after eating. A short walk helps muscles absorb glucose more efficiently, reducing post-meal spikes and improving overall metabolic handling. It doesn't need to be intense. Even gentle activity supports better cellular response. The goal of this protocol is not restriction or complexity. It is about creating balance in the first inputs of the day so the body is not forced into emergency correction mode. Here's what I tell my patients when they're trying to make this shift without overcomplicating their lives. Start with simple swaps, not complete overhauls. Instead of sugary cereal or flavored granola in the morning, shift toward protein-rich options that naturally stabilize energy. Even something as basic as eggs, plain yogurt, or a handful of nuts can dramatically change how your body responds in the first few hours of the day. The goal isn't perfection, it's replacing fast-spiking foods with slower, steadier ones. Next, focus on pairing strategies. One of the easiest clinical habits to teach is this. Never eat fast carbohydrates alone. If you're having bread, pair it with eggs or avocado. If you're having fruit, add yogurt or nuts. If you're including oats, combine them with protein and healthy fats. This simple combination slows glucose absorption and reduces the sharp metabolic swings that can trigger stress responses inside the body. Timing also makes a noticeable difference. Many people start their day with coffee on an empty stomach, often with sugar added. I usually encourage patients to reverse that order. Eat first, then have coffee afterward. This small adjustment helps reduce the intensity of the initial cortisol and glucose response, leading to a more stable energy curve instead of a sharp spike and crash pattern. To avoid boredom, which is where most routines fail, rotation is important. You don't need the same breakfast every day. One day can be eggs and vegetables, another can be yogurt with seeds and berries, another can be avocado toast with a protein side. Variety keeps the routine sustainable while still supporting metabolic stability. Environment matters just as much as food choices. Many people default to convenience foods in the morning simply because they're available and fast. Preparing even small parts of breakfast ahead of time, like boiling eggs, pre-portioning nuts, or chopping vegetables, removes friction and makes better choices easier under time pressure. Reducing reliance on packaged, sugar-heavy convenience foods is not about restriction. It's about redesigning your environment so the healthier option becomes the easiest option. When patients make this shift, consistency improves dramatically, and so does their ability to maintain stable energy throughout the day. One of the most common mistakes is skipping breakfast and then breaking the fast with something high in sugar or refined carbohydrates. When the body has been in a fasting state for hours, the first major input becomes a powerful metabolic signal. If that signal is sugar heavy, it can trigger a sharper glucose spike and stronger oxidative stress response than if the meal had been balanced. The simple correction is to break the fast gently with protein, fiber, and fats first, rather than fast-absorbing carbohydrates. Another frequent issue is drinking sweetened coffee on an empty stomach. This combination delivers caffeine and sugar directly into a system that is still hormonally primed from the overnight fast. It can amplify cortisol and glucose fluctuations, creating an unstable energy curve early in the day. A better approach is to eat something balanced first, then have coffee afterward, ideally with minimal or no added sugar. A third misconception is assuming that healthy-looking cereals, granola, or breakfast bars are automatically supportive of metabolic health. Many of these products are marketed as nutritious, but still contain high levels of refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Biologically, they can behave very similarly to desserts in terms of glucose response. The key correction is to read beyond the label and prioritize macronutrient balance over marketing claims. Another subtle mistake is eating fruit alone, especially in large portions. While fruit contains natural sugars and beneficial nutrients, consuming it without protein or fat can still lead to a rapid rise in blood glucose in sensitive individuals. Pairing fruit with yogurt, nuts, or seeds helps slow absorption and stabilize the response. A final mistake is overcompensating later in the day, skipping or undereating in the morning, then trying to fix it with restrictive eating or extreme calorie control afterward. This often backfires by increasing stress hormones and making blood sugar regulation less stable over time. A more effective approach is consistency, steady, balanced intake rather than cycles of restriction and rebound. The important myth to break here is that foods that look healthy on the surface are always metabolically supportive. In reality, the body responds to composition and timing, not branding or appearance. A healthy granola bar can create a stronger glucose spike than a balanced meal if it lacks protein, fat, and fiber. The core correction across all these mistakes is simple. Focus on balance, timing, and pairing rather than relying on assumptions about what is healthy. In the first 1 to 2 weeks of making these morning adjustments, the changes are often subtle, but internally meaningful. What's happening beneath the surface is a gradual stabilization of glucose variability. Instead of sharp spikes and crashes, the body begins to experience a smoother metabolic curve in the early hours of the day. Many people don't feel dramatic differences yet, but they may notice slightly more stable energy, fewer mid-morning dips, and a reduced sense of starting the day on a roller coaster. Between weeks 3 and 6, the effects typically become more noticeable in daily life. Energy levels tend to feel more consistent, and the frequency of sudden fatigue or cravings often decreases. This is the stage where the body starts adapting more visibly to the new pattern. Cellular systems involved in energy regulation begin operating under less stress, which supports more efficient metabolic responses. The morning no longer feels like an unpredictable trigger point for energy instability. By the 2 to 3 month mark, deeper physiological shifts may begin to emerge. This is where metabolic flexibility, your body's ability to switch efficiently between fuel sources, can improve. Energy production becomes more stable, recovery from daily stressors feels smoother, and overall resilience may increase. While stem cell-related processes are not something that can be directly felt, the environment they operate in becomes more supportive when inflammation and oxidative stress are consistently reduced over time. It's important to understand that these changes are cumulative. Stem cell function and broader regenerative processes are highly sensitive to long-term patterns rather than short-term interventions. Consistency is the key driver of meaningful progress. Several factors can slow down or blunt these improvements. Inconsistent habits, such as alternating between balanced mornings and high-sugar breakfasts, can confuse the body's regulatory systems and delay adaptation. Poor sleep also plays a major role, as it directly affects hormonal balance, glucose control, and cellular repair processes. Chronic stress is another significant factor, as elevated stress hormones can counteract many of the metabolic benefits being built through dietary changes. The most important takeaway is that progress is not linear or immediate. It reflects accumulation. Each balanced morning builds on the last, gradually shifting the internal environment toward greater stability, improved energy regulation, and more efficient cellular function over time. It's important to step back and remember something fundamental. Your body is not fragile. It is adaptive and remarkably resilient. Even when internal systems have been under daily stress for years, they don't simply shut down or lose their ability to recover. They respond to change. They adjust. And when given the right conditions, they begin to restore balance. Even if this morning habit has been part of your routine for a long time, that does not mean the effects are permanent. Biological systems are constantly renewing themselves. Blood, tissues, and even cellular components are continuously being rebuilt. That means the direction you choose now has real influence over what happens next. One of the most powerful truths in health is that small daily decisions are not small in their effect. They compound. A single balanced morning doesn't transform the body overnight, but repeated consistently, it gradually shifts the internal environment toward stability, efficiency, and resilience. This is not about achieving perfection or following an extreme set of rules. It is about direction. Moving away from patterns that create stress in the system and toward patterns that support smoother energy, better regulation, and healthier cellular function. Consistency always matters more than intensity. You don't need to do everything perfectly. You just need to do the supportive things often enough that your body recognizes a new pattern and begins to adapt to it. And perhaps the most encouraging part is this. The same systems that were affected by repeated habits are the same systems that can respond positively to improved ones. The body remembers patterns, but it also learns new ones. So even small shifts in your morning routine are not just dietary changes, they are signals. Signals that slowly guide your biology in a different direction, one that supports repair, balance, and long-term vitality.